I agree. So I have a draft,
Oh, good.
potential action steps.
Okay.
And we didn't coordinate here.
I don't know, I think you guys are in cahoots.
Yeah.
I was just about to say,
Really? This doesn't say much. What I did was I went to the, one for Jim there, went to the report to the selectmen and used that as a structure for just sort of pulling out what might be an agenda. There are no dates here. But just, we just see this as a list of things,
I submit this to the board, this is
a list of things which would be our agenda.
Department of Housing.
Certainly could be expanded and so on.
About several times for the years to investment.
A lot of,
And
so take a quick look and then I'll explain
I've already filed in the Department of Housing.
what's there.
So I bring it, right?
Sure.
Shannon, you all set online? Have you had a chance to try to log in?
I haven't had a chance to try, but I do have your email,
Okay.
but I have everything ahead that I needed. Thank you.
Yeah, oh, well, you shouldn't have to say thank you. I was about 3 weeks past when I should have had it done.
So what I did with this was to combine a number of the subjects listed in the audit in what seemed to be some kind of grouping of things. For example, the first one, marketing and project development. A lot of what was talked about in the audit and in our response to the Board of Selectmen had to do with seeking additional support for marketing, using reports, etc. And so it seemed to me like some real strong action on our part, like setting up a marketing team, some subgroup of us responsible for holding all that information, moving things forward, etc., might make sense. I mean, it's just an idea here. But also they might then bring forward projects, if any came to them. A project could come to any of us. I mean, it's not exclusively their responsibility.
I'd be tempted to mention in that paragraph working with MOBD,
Sure.
since you're 43 priority.
A lot of things that we could work with, mass development, MOBD, and so
I'd
on.
be tempted to include those as, here's a couple things I'm thinking of. I
Go
think
ahead.
this is a great step, especially prior to the meeting with the selectmen. So not only can we, at the selectmen's meeting, review your response to their suggested activities and an action plan going forward. And so I would suggest, if you beat this up a hair,
Yeah, go ahead.
so MOBD and mass development would probably be worth mentioning by name within here.
Mm-hmm.
You might even mention a continuation of your
UMass.
UMass initiatives and
Right.
those other kinds of groups that people think you ought to be
Right.
working with.
Good.
Mention in
Excellent.
your action plan that you intend to work with those groups.
Exactly, and we do. So,
I no doubt, but I'm just,
right. Put it in there. No, good, excellent. Financial and document management and funding. We've taken some steps towards that, and I think what we need to do, in a sense, is publish some kind of description of what our financial management system is and looks like, and how it's going to be maintained. And I tacked on to that because it's a kind of a record-keeping thing as well. The same kind of structure and activity for our records, i.e. minutes, documents, agreements, etc. But not specifically. The next to the last one is really a subset of this, creating a format for contracts and reports. That would be that would be a tool within the information management system that we might have with description. I think a big part of what happened relative to the audit had to do with the feeling that many people had that they could not get information that they needed. And having spent a little time downstairs, I wouldn't argue with them a whole lot, but some of our information was readily available and some of it wasn't. And I think just having a description of how we're going to keep things, not just historical things, but also moving forward, would be good for all of us. So that's why those two are sort of lumped together, because it's a similar kind of activity. One's about money, one's about other information. Establish a process for parcel valuation. That's one of the things that the audit seemed very interested in. DCAM seems very interested in it. We have a means of valuing parcels. I think we could probably expand on that in some way, shape, or form. But I think writing it down and publishing it, it is actually written. I mean, it is in our minutes and in our record, what we've been doing the last several years. But
I think they're looking for third party as opposed to.
well, that's what I'm implying here,
independent, yeah.
right? Including third party for sure.
There was a process that was established by a lawyer that was delivered to the
Right.
selectmen
Right.
and reviewed pretty carefully and approved.
Yeah.
So you might, rather than say establish a process, maybe
Publish.
publish and.
Expand.
Yeah. Establish a process sounds like you ain't got one.
Right. Right.
Or in
And we do.
fact, you absolutely do.
Right.
And it was presented to the selectmen who were in favor of that process.
Build
And-
on or build on.
And the audit report mentioned basically, well, you probably should have some third-party involvement as that, which
Right.
could be
Expand
added to
the
that
process.
process perhaps. But this looks way too thin for what you've already accomplished, that's all I'm saying.
Understand. So maybe expand the process or build on.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
to
put
include-
another sentence or two
to
alongside
include.
this thing.
Right. Okay. Got it.
Yeah, review existing process and update if necessary or something.
Got it. Got it. Okay. The format for contracts and reports, I think, just simply we've discussed it. I think writing it down and making it clear to anybody and making it available is easy to do. And then a new member orientation. I remember when I came on, Bill handed me a package of stuff, and he said, welcome. I think if we, and there's a pretty steep learning curve when you first get started in this group. Maybe a little more structure to it, but certainly it would make others outside of the group feel more confident that what we're doing is making it clear about policies and procedures and protocols and so on and so forth. And then maybe what we ought to do is just sort of cap all of this with a policy and procedure manual for the board, where we put all of these things that we're going to write up together. This doesn't really suggest anything concrete or specific, but rather suggests that we take a look at these areas and begin to document them and pull it all together. And I suggested over the next 12 months. I really don't know what the right schedule is for that. I think taking these things deliberately, one or two at a time, and people volunteering to do that might get us to the point where we'd have it. And it certainly would provide for those who cannot see it now a clear picture of some of the structure and process that we already do have that's served us well in the past. Plus it would give us some additional tools to work with, I think. So that's what I put this together with. We've got some good suggestions already to add to the list and rephrase it.
Under that last bullet, where you're talking about new member orientation for community state policies, town policies,
Yep.
town meeting, open meeting laws, state ethics concerns, because that was one of the issues in the report, I think.
Yep.
To just make sure people are aware of those kinds of issues.
I think,
It's kind of, as you say, as a new member of almost any board in town, and this is years and years and years ago, I think Ann Elsapidi put together some kind of a committee members handbook, which is pretty thin, that the town as a whole should review and see what else might be added to that and have some kind of a orientation. I mean, with all the electronic information we have today and the ability to hand somebody a DVD, say, go home and watch this on your laptop and help somebody walk through a new process. Because there's a whole bunch of stuff that we appoint people to different committees all the time. They don't know about open meeting laws or violations or electronic mails. So this what you're doing here would be useful to not just you, but for others.
so I think most, if not all, I mean, I would say all, but I'm not 100% positive of everything. This information is conveyed to our members, but I think making it clear to others that we do that through having a written document that guides us for doing that will give others more confidence than they currently, some others more confidence than they currently have in what we're doing.